All right. What's going on, everybody? My name is Ian Robinson, and welcome back to another stream. You might notice a little bit of a different vibe than my normal Wednesday streams, and that is because I have a special guest who we'll bring on in a minute. But just quickly wanted to say hi and let you know that we're actually going to do something really fun and different today. Today, we're going to be talking about using game assets, and more specifically with our special guest, we're going to be using some of their assets to help finish our project. So this is going to be super cool. I see everybody in the chat. What's happening? Feel free to ask questions and all that good jazz, like this one. How you guys doing today? I'm doing great, doing fantastic. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is just bring on our special guest. So let's meet Mr. Jordan Henry. Jordan, how you doing,
guys?
buddy?
Good to see you, Ian.
Great to see you too. So Jordan, please tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Jordan Henry. I'm the co-founder and COO at MetaTailor. And if you guys have not heard about MetaTailor yet, MetaTailor is the real-time platform that allows you to take any clothing, any avatar, and send it to any engine without ever manually painting a skin weight or having to do manual retargeting. It all works directly in whatever environment you're going to.
Heck yeah. No, dude, that sounds super cool. And thankfully too, so Jordan and I actually met over at GDC earlier in the year, and we got talking and thought it'd be really fun to not only do a project together, but also showcase the project because, again, I specialize in 3D printing, and a lot of my work, as you guys know, actually gets done via statue work. And for those of you who may not know, I have a toy background. I used to work at Funko and stuff. So these are like, how do I get the job done quickly is always beneficial. And of course, you want the quality to never be sacrificed. So these are things that we were thinking about, and that's where we came in. Before we get into the software, though, let's real quick. I'm just going to let you guys just a quick reminder that, of course, I'm at Maxon, and so this is where ZBrush now lives under the Maxon family. And so if you guys have any questions about Maxon, please go to maxon.net. If you guys need to learn or want to learn our software, which is something that's near and dear to how we learn, and learning how you learn is super important. So this is tools to help you with that. So we have a Cineversity platform, which has all of our getting started tutorials, not just for ZBrush, but also for Cinema, Red Giant, Redshift, etc. And also to the Z Classroom, which is one of the Pixelogic's way of learning ZBrush, is still live, and you can come in here and actually check out a lot of the older information because the information is still relevant. And like this stream, it's going to be on our YouTube, but also this is where you can have even more learning content, and also where I normally stream like this one will be happening. And then if you are a student or a teacher, we do have student, teacher, and classroom licensing, so you can follow all that stuff at the maxon.net. So without further ado, let's get into the project. I'm going to minimize this, and I'm already sneak peeking a little bit. This is the overall project that was done. So this is our little salamander character. I came up with him about, like 2-3 years ago now for another project, which will be relaunching this project over at SIGGRAPH of this year, which is where Jordan and I are going to be. And so with this project, we wanted to first see, what kind of tools we can use in our Maxon suite to help make a video game or a video game level. And this character was created for that. And then we repurposed this character to actually make a statue. And so took a little bit of influences from a few other friends of mine, and like Andre, he loves Wu-Tang. And so I really liked that kind of like style of stand and statue kind of street vibes. So we went with something like this, and this is where we are. And the clothing in here, while I did add some sculptural detail to the clothing, these clothings actually came directly from MetaTailor, and it was really easy and simple to use. And so how did we get there? That's really the key question, right? Well, we first have to start with a base mesh. And a base mesh is something that obviously, you need to have the character riggable, which is super important. And so I took this character here, which is the original salamander, and I sculpted clothes on him originally, but I wanted something different for him. So we basically was like, you know what, let's get this character rigged. And rigging a character is pretty simple these days. You can use Cinema, or you can use an auto rigger of your choice, and then you can just go ahead and, repurpose that. So in this case here, I went ahead and just exported this out as an FBX. So you click your little export button up here at the top, and then, figure out where you want to save that. Here, just come down to FBX, and then you can just pretty much save this wherever you need to. You can see here I actually had a body here. Now ZBrush doesn't do direct rigging at this time, so again, I use Cinema, but you can use any other version that you would like. And then from there, we just need to pop it into MetaTailor, which is super awesome. So, boom. Now he's already dressed here, so we can quote start from the beginning type thing. But this is where I'm going to let really Jordan kind of chime in a bit. But all I really needed to do, and this is what's really fun, because Jordan actually, he challenged me, and I really appreciate that. He's like, here's a software. Do me a favor, see how intuitive it is. And you guys know I need something to be like pretty straightforward for me to get it. And so it was really awesome because I was able to click a new project, and we can call this whatever we wanted to, hit test, and then it does bring in this little guy here. And I was able to also load in my own avatar, which I'll let Jordan do the specifics on that. But I just wanted to first play with it, and they have a marketplace, which is fun. So I was able to come in and take a look at their marketplace and see what things were available and, you know, what I could download, what I could use, et cetera, et cetera. And so from here, I was able to just like quickly apply something. Now, of course, I'm using a different base mesh right now. This is one that is actually with MetaTailor. But you could see it's like, it was just really simple to just come in and just like navigate, move around and see that space, and then come on, and then boom, the clothes get positioned. So this is what's really fun about it. So long story short, I did the import, and then here, let me just not save this project real quick. I did the import, and let me share my character real fast. And once I browsed around for about 5 minutes, I was able to find the sweater I wanted to use, some pants I wanted to use, some shoes, which is always kind of cool if you guys need shoes. And then even a backpack, which I'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, this was super fun. It was just easy to just be like, oh, I want this, I don't want this type thing. But this is where I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jordan, because I want him to go over the specifics of this. So Jordan, I'm going to pass it to you, buddy.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Ian.
All right, so let me, bam, there you go.
And look at that, the same character on screen.
Love it.
So what's really cool about this, guys, and I'll give you kind of a high-level overview of what MetaTailor offers, all the kind of nuanced things you can do inside of MetaTailor. And really, our goal with MetaTailor was to give you the ability to rapidly produce avatars dressed in different clothing and then just deploy them. Not sit and paint skin weights for a week, just get one character and then decide, oops, maybe I want to switch avatars or switch clothing. And you have to do that work over again. So the whole purpose of MetaTailor is any clothing, any character, any engine. Now, as you can see here, Ian went ahead and just shared this project file with me that he's been working on. And all the work that he did to get this clothing how he wanted it, dress this character, he just sent over the project file. I was able to load it up, and all the layering is saved. All the data is there. And it doesn't, you don't have to send over multiple FBXs or OBJs or anything like that. It's just one nice file and loads up all the content layered how Ian left it. So starting off here, we'll start with that the dynamic layering system. So you can see on the left side of the screen, you have the way your outfit is assembled. And I could simply just say, you know what? I actually want to tuck the jacket into the pants. And just like that, it'll in real time do that layering to then adjust how you want it as an artist. Now, another thing you can do is you might say, you know, I love the pants, I love the shoes, but let's switch the jacket out for something else. So we can go over to our marketplace tab. And then I'll just go to maybe some clothing, and we'll find something completely random here. Now, what's really, yeah, right. You have your closet here, your digital closet. What's really cool about this is, like Ian was saying, no, you don't have to pre-fit any of this clothing to fit the avatar that you want to use. All of it, once it's in MetaTailor, you can mix, match, and exchange any content however you want it to sit on a character, even if you switch characters in the future. So I'm just going to click a random jacket here. Start with this one. You'll see it'll download it up. Then I apply that to my character. And just like that, it's sitting outside of that jacket. Maybe I want to layer it underneath. You won't be able to see it anymore because it's a hoodie, but if I actually take the hoodie off, see that jacket now sits there. Maybe I want to throw a shirt on underneath, so we'll quickly do that. Find something cool here. Let's see.
Dude, the first thing I dressed my character in, just to see it, like was just like a nice suit and then like a dress, and I was like, I want to see what he could wear.
Yeah. I mean, you get the ability. It's like you're reaching in the screen and you're tailoring. You're
Yep.
tailoring the avatar and really seeing how things look before, applying them. So that's the dynamic layering system. Again, you can go in. It works with any aspects. If you throw a belt on, you can tuck that how you want it. A shirt tie, you can tuck that how you want it. You really, as an artist, have the flexibility to do whatever you want. Now, additionally, I briefly showed you guys the marketplace. We have 3 different parts of our marketplace. We have free content, we have pro content, and then we have paid content, which other artists are actually selling to the MetaTailor marketplace. And we're offering up to 90% royalties on anyone that wants to do that. Now, going forward from the marketplace, if you click on an asset, you have some basic controls that you can do to adjust how this asset sits on an actual avatar. I can adjust the thickness and how far it sits off the layer underneath. So if I want this super tight, you see it moves and adjusts the gap between the different layers. Then if I come in and say I want it to go the other direction and I want it super skin tight, you can use the shrink wrap slider to actually adjust how tight it is on the avatar's body. And then you have some other brush tools that you can use, like your grab, your shrink wrap. So shrink wrap brush allows you to paint the shrink wrap areas instead of using like a global slider. Then you have your push, pull, smoothing, and relax brush. Relax brush is really interesting because it allows you to, if you are adjusting the mesh and you maybe distort the texture, you can use the relax brush to kind of bring that texture back in and find the equilibrium between the vertices, so it kind of smooths that back out. And then finally, the visibility brush. That allows you to paint out, basically mesh culling areas that you don't want shown when you export. So what we'll do now is I'll quickly go over just to show you guys how the real-time layering works cross avatar rigs. So obviously we have the salamander character that Ian set up, but let's say I want to jump over to something like this male MetaTailor default avatar. You can see completely different rig, completely different pose. Everything works, and we can see that it's also skin weighted and ready to go. So
Yeah.
I'll do it one more time, and maybe I'll switch over to something like a little crazier, which some of you guys may have seen this character before, the slacker character.
Yeah.
Now, I may have to do a little bit of tweaking on his shoes there because his feet are so abnormal, but with a couple tweaks there, I can get that looking perfect. And we can see, of course, just like the other character, it's rigged and ready to go.
Yeah.
And then one more thing I'll show real quick is let's go back to the salamander. I want to show you guys the real-time physics as well, and I'm going to hand it back to Ian to show the rest of the process. So if I actually let's say I take these clothes off and I throw a different assembly on. So what's really cool about the assemblies is we're going to introduce a UGC aspect where if you're an artist or you're a user, you can go in our marketplace and let's say you kind of kit bash, for example, an outfit together as an assembly. You'll be able to repost that as a UGC created asset on the actual marketplace for other users to use. So if I just throw something that would look good with physics, so maybe it's an asset like this. So we'll see random outfit completely designed to not fit this avatar. We'll see it all layer up in real time. Let it do its thing. Perfect, just like that. And we'll throw an animation on there just to see that it is rigged. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this jacket, and at the top bar, you can see there's a physics button. And it's going to generate the physics maps for this item. And you can see I now have the full ability to apply physics to it. Additionally, I can actually paint physics in real time. So if I maybe throw a running animation on there, it doesn't look exactly how I'd want it to. So what I can do is I can say, you know what, some of these areas that are kind of clipping a little bit, I want to actually go in and roughly paint those out and apply skin weights to those areas. So maybe somewhere like here on the side and stuff like that. And then maybe I decide I want more physics on the hood. So we can kind of paint that, get more movement on the hood there. Just like that. So that's a very high level overview of the workflow of MetaTailor. Now, the last thing I'll leave you with on the overall overview is obviously exporting. That's a very important thing. So what we'll be announcing with Ian and Max on a SIGGRAPH is the bridge of MetaTailor going to, whether it's Character Creator, Unreal Engine, or Unity. You can actually in one button click, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the stream, but in one button click, you could take your creation and have it beam right over to runtime in Unity, Unreal, or even Character Creator for animation. So Ian, I'll hand it back to you and to show the rest of the pipeline, and we'll come back to the plugin stuff.
All right, sounds awesome. Let's go ahead. Bam. All right, so thank you, Jordan. Yeah, like Jordan was saying too, once you get your thing, your scene all set up, it's really coming down here and doing an export, which is literally what I did. Now, the fun part here is I'm going to show you guys some workflows, because obviously this is really good for real-time rendering, game assets, maybe some animation projects you guys might have. But in the case of like ZBrush specifically, what if you're a toy sculptor or a statue sculptor, or you just need to bring it in and use it for ZBrush, and you want to do more with it on a sculptural asset? So once you go ahead and do your exporting, like I've already done, we can go ahead and import, your scene, and it's really just simple as coming up here to import, and then clicking whatever you named your FBX and opening that up. I already did that, so we don't need to do that. But you can see here that we have, sorry, wrong file. It's actually this guy. There we go. So this is how this will come in. And you can see here that this is the mesh straight from MetaTailor as we throw it in here. Now, these, obviously they had textures, which means they have UVs and stuff like that. Now, depending on how the sweater was built, let's just isolate the sweater for a second by hitting solo. You can see here that it's all single-sided geometry. And some of the things that I noticed was that, inside of MetaTailor, my character is very abnormal. There's not a walking on two-legged salamander that I've met in my life. There could be. But in this case here, because I was setting up this character to be rigged, I had the ears kind of, or the little horn tentacle thing, antennas, whatever they call them. My anatomy's terrible today. I'm so sorry. But they were popping out of left field, right? And so this actually caused a little bit of clipping on the mesh, which is totally normal and to be expected. So in this case here, I noticed that, the mesh is still there, which is awesome, which means I can go ahead and smooth it. But we notice a little bit of holes that are happening. And that's okay. That's because with game-ready assets, typically you don't need things welded together. But in this case, we're going to need things welded together. So if I were to hit D on the keyboard for dynamic subdiv, this is something I want to show you guys because it might come off like it's a bug, but it's not. If I hit D, you could see here that I'm actually getting some points that are like causing these quote holes, right? Well, all this means is that these points are not welded together, and we can fix that with a click of a button. So once I have this in and I'm working with a single-sided geometry, I just need to come over to the tool menu on the right-hand side, go to geometry, modify topology, and you're going to look at this little button right here called weld points. And once you click this button here, there it is. If I hit D again, you'll notice that all of that holes or clipping went away. And that's because those points now just became welded, which means now I have a very usable mesh to sculpt on, which is super awesome. I got just take another look at the chat too. So perfect. No questions today. If you guys have questions, please feel free. Just interrupt in the chat. Just be like, hey, I got a question. We can go through it. So now that I've welded the points here, what's really fun is I want to see how many of these points are actually like how many pieces of mesh are separate. Because you can see here, I do have a drawstring. Looks like I have two drawstrings and my arms and so forth. So next I'm going to come on down to PolyGroups and I'm going to say AutoGroups. And this is where we get to now do some mesh isolation. So I can see here that I have the drawstrings that are attached. I even have these eyelets that are here. So I can just quickly come in, press Control and Shift together, and then just quickly isolate this one poly group. And then I can just go to Subtool and I can do a split hidden. And now at that point, my objects are now broken off into other pieces. And so this is where things get a little fun and pretty cool. The next thing too is, of course, triangulated geometry is not always sculptor friendly, and that's fine. Usually in game engines, things do get triangulated at the end of the day, and that's normal for game engines. But for what we want to do sculpturally, we're going to need to go ahead and kind of clean this mesh up a little bit. And so this is where a handy dandy ZRemesher is going to come in. And this workflow might seem like pretty straightforward, but these are little things that's just like going to make your life a lot easier. So I'll come in here to the ZRemesher, and then This is one of the things I like to break down in every stream. It's just kind of like my thought process, because I always want to give you the why I do things. So here I have my active points, and it's 16,890. It's an arbitrary number. It's just pretty low. So what I want to do from here is just, I want to go to my target polygon count, and note that it's defaulted at 5. That 5 is actually in thousands, so that's 5,000. So in this case, you know, that's only like a third, a little over a third of what the total count is. But I always like to kick this up a little bit, say something like 10, and just give me a little bit more topology, because sometimes if it's too low and you ZRemesh, while ZRemesh is a great tool and it can do things really well, there may not be enough information in the ZRemesher to capture the actual shape of that. So I always like to go up just a little bit, because you can always ZRemesh down as you go through. And then the adaptive button is turned on by default. That's because when we ZRemesh, the quads get really big and really small depending on the flow of the mesh. So in this case, you know, there's not a lot of information here at the top, so you might get bigger quads, but then there's a lot of information down here in the creases, so you might get little quads. I want ZRemesher to give me even topology as much as possible, but I still wanted to take into consideration the mesh. So I'm going to set the adaptive button, keep that on, but down here is an adaptive size slider, and I'm just going to slide that down to say something like 0 or 1. And then from here, I'm just going to go ahead. I do not have symmetry turned on, and that's okay, because this model is not necessarily symmetrical 100%. There's little differences between the two. But I'm going to go ahead and, before hitting ZRemesher, actually just note that I do want to eventually, you know, if I want to project any type of history on scope to detail, I'll just press and hold Control, come up to the history part, and just click this guy. And that'll give me a history marker. And what that'll do is let me call back to that point in time, because if we get super low and we lose some of the folds, we can actually get those folds back. And then from there, we're just going to go ahead and hit ZRemesher. Now I'm going to leave the wireframe on, but real fast, I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift-S to stamp that one time so we can see the before and after. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit ZRemesher. And we'll let ZRemesher think for a second. This isn't super complicated shape, but there we go. That's actually looking pretty cool. And so from here now, let's actually go half. Let's do half one more time. And there we go. And so now we can get some pretty good quads coming through. Now, it's not perfect. That's why retopology is always a thing. So if you wanted to go ahead and do a retopo, you absolutely could. But in this case, we're just going to be using it for statue. And the beauty part about statue work and toy work is absolutely, I don't care about the topology whatsoever. I don't need to. That's one of the reasons why I got into toys. I don't have to worry about mesh too much. So here we go. And you can see now that this is actually working fairly well, which is awesome. And honestly, that's it. That's all you really need to do for each item you bring over with MetaTailor. And we got as complicated at one point as I brought in a backpack from MetaTailor as well. If we go back to the MetaTailor scene, we actually come over here to design, and I'm just going to hide these things real quick. And I was like, oh, I just want a backpack. And so this was the backpack I ended up doing and pulling in, and it was the same thing. I just brought it over. I went ahead and welded those points, and then turned around and just quickly did a ZRemesh, and we were good to go. So that's the workflow between MetaTailor and ZBrush. It's really simple. It's really straightforward and to the point. We got a question coming in, which is, will there be a tutorial in the future for ZBrush and MetaTailor or vice versa workflow? Absolutely. I think that's something we could talk about. This is actually one of the reasons why we wanted to do this stream, was kind of like sample that. So this is your first video tutorial on how to do that. Right. But absolutely, that's a conversation that would definitely like to have in the future. So yeah. So then from here, what's really cool, and again, like, you know, I really wanted to like just showcase those simple steps. There's not a whole lot that really needed to happen there, but another like kind of little tip you can do, if we come down here to say something like the shoes, right? One of the things that you can do, of course, that you may not know is if you want to know what the UVs look like on something, you can actually come in through here to PolyGroups and do a AutoGroups with UVs. And this is actually something that's really helpful, because this will isolate the UVs as a whole for those polygroups. And that is a great way to kind of see where things get separated and split out before you weld the points. Because once you weld points in ZRemesh, UVs they're gone at that point. Again, for statue work, we don't necessarily need UVs, but in this case, it's like if you wanted to do any noise with UVs or any texturing, then this is something that you absolutely could do. And so just to demonstrate that real fast, if you like the way this is, you're not really going to be worrying too much about, the topology itself. Like if I hit D right now and smooth that out, again, that's going to kind of split. But maybe I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave this low res for right now. Once we have those UVs laid out here, you could do things like go into surface noise. And let's just frame that shoe for a second. And then we can do this by actual UVs, right? So I can click the UV button. I can even go into the plugin here, and I can find something that looks good. Like maybe I want some hex tiling. And I'm just going to go ahead and I don't want to mix the basic noise, and I don't want any color information. But here I can go ahead and kind of just play with the actual scaling of that and kind of see if this is something that I like. The strength is actually going in the wrong direction, so I'll change that. Or maybe too, I could just hit cancel on this, and I could open up preset noises. So maybe something with a little bit more suede. Click this guy. Yes, we broke it. That's awesome. That's okay. We can come in here and edit. Again, we can get rid of this color information. And then from here, we could start adjusting. And let's go to UVs. So you can see here, this is also something too that just is going to be really beneficial when you're trying to utilize any of the tools from MetaTailor, because again, it comes in with the UV. So you can have some suede shoes, and then you can just apply that. And if there's enough topology for that, like here, let's just go ahead and go to, we're not going to smooth it, but we're just going to divide a few times and then go back to our noise and then just hit apply. And boom, we have some texture on the shoe. So these are things that are like really, really helpful. If you have a question, please go ahead and just put it in the chat, and then we'll answer questions as we go. Cool. While we wait for said question, then let me just go ahead and showcase some of the other things I've done. So let's go back in here to, let's just go to the main project real quick. So this was the ultimate, the goal that we went with it. And there are some things within ZBrush that I did here that I wanted to spotlight. First and foremost is, this was going to be 3D printed. So here's that backpack, by the way. So I actually used the noise information, to get in some of this nice texture. I brought in a different alpha, and I even have some stitch brush. And this stitch brush ships with ZBrush. So if you go B for brush and S, then right down here is our stitch basic noise. And so what this really allows me to do, now this mesh here is decimated, so it's not going to give me the best information. So that's where Sculptress comes into play. So if I were to turn on Sculptress and start drawing, you can see here that I just went in and just added some stitching to bring it to life a little bit more and give it just a little bit of TLC. I'm working with a mouse right now because I'm crazy, but you'll just come in, just with your nice pen, and then you can just get some really cool stuff. And what's fun about this brush specifically, there we go, is it already has lazy mouse turned on. And one of the techniques I wanted to share with you guys is when you got this giant tail and you start painting stuff out, if you were to like put that last stitch in and slow down, you can change direction almost immediately. And so this is like a really cool way to get some custom stitching. So if you had any type of patchwork, etc., then you can absolutely do that. Let's see here. Let's see with the question. Okay, now I want to ask something. The stitches on the jacket. If I print it as a toy, will the details come out smoothly? So that depends on the quality of the actual mesh at the end of the day and the printer. So for something like this, you might see, and it's a great question, by the way, you might see here that I have some stitching that's like, it's kind of elevated a little bit. And yes, it absolutely will show. Some of the things that you'll want to remember when you're doing anything for printing is how big something is. You're always going to lose detail. You'll lose detail, probably, I want to say estimate, depending on the printer, between 5 to 15% detail loss, which could be quite massive. Now the 15%, that's a pretty high number. That's for more like FDM printing, because while there are some great printers out there, it's pretty safe to say that not every printer has the high level quality. So depending on how big your nozzle is, like if it's a 0.4 or is it a 0.2 nozzle, that's a huge difference. Are you printing at 0.2 or are you printing at 0.16? These are things that you really want to consider. These came out, I printed at 0.16. I don't have the statue here with me because I actually packed it up because I have to ship it to Vancouver for SIGGRAPH. But these came out really well. Just notice how much they're sticking off of the mesh. They're actually elevated pretty high. And that is what I wanted. So then it would put up. If it's something like what AV is saying here right now, which is a 8K or above SLA printer, it's going to come out amazing. So absolutely, it will show up no problem. So great question, by the way. Let's see here. Good, got some cool questions. What's the minimum scale you go when you make details for these models? Will the tertiary details from the jacket come out during production? So kind of like what we were already answering, Rafi. Yes, I actually printed the statue at 400 millimeter or about 15, 16 inches tall. So it's actually quite big. And so the details did come out pretty nicely. And you do want to just kind of factor in scale. Let's see here. Okay, so for a long time, have you been seeing opaque, desaturated, natural colors over in video games, movies, TV shows? Is everywhere in the dude? So not quite relevant for this conversation here, but at the same time, it's lighting, color, information, all that stuff. It just depends on what render engine you're going through. The colors in MetaTailor with what they're showcasing for their like real-time feedback is actually quite nice. Like I really like the color and everything that's happening. When I put these information on, it actually looks really nice, and I get exactly what I see because this is a texture set that I get with this jacket. So getting that texture and stuff, it actually looks really good in other ones. I actually threw it in Cinema and did a render test in Redshift, and it came out really great. Let's see.
Ian,
here.
if I could, I saw that question about the workflow stuff.
Sure.
It's very interesting to talk about for a second. Once I met Ian, as creative people and technical people, our gears just started turning. I'm like, okay, what's possible here? And he actually brought up the 3D printing stuff, and we found that super fascinating. And that's kind of a world we didn't totally understand and know how they assemble things for printing. And obviously, this came out absolutely amazing. So to that question, there's a lot of stuff that we plan on showcasing in the future. Obviously, SIGGRAPH, we're going to be showing a lot of cool stuff with how it's working with Maxon and stuff. But really, as users of these tools, being you guys, the community, we're looking at potentially talking about how a one-click send to ZBrush or send to other Maxon tools could look like. So if that is something you are interested in and even wanting the workflow to be even faster than what Ian already showed, then definitely let us know, and we'll continue to expand on that in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds great, man. Oh, awesome, man. Thanks. Glad you like the sculpture. Yeah, we're going to be giving this sculpture away. If you're at SIGGRAPH, just stop by. You'll be able to download the STL files at SIGGRAPH. So if you happen to be there, if not, then Jordan and I will talk about other ways we could probably do it after SIGGRAPH. We've got another question here. Once you told me to say the details during decimation, we can mask that area out. I tried masking, but it's taking forever to decimate. The model is only at 4 million. It's a great question. And actually, so there could be a couple things you could try. Let's actually do this. I'm going to load up. Let me go here to load, and I could show you a tip with that because you actually took the words out of my mouth here. I was going to show you guys some cool decimation tricks too. Also, I'm going to show you guys what I did with this logo a bit. If you guys have not used Matchmaker Brush, you definitely are going to want to do that. Okay, so here we just have this head here. It's already keyed, and you can see here it's pretty dense. It's about 1 million. So let me do me a favor, and I'm just going to divide one time and delete lower just to get it closer to the 4 million, like what the question is right now. And then from here, if I wanted to save some areas, first thing we need to note is we need to make sure that there's no errors with our mesh. Decimation is going to try to take a look at the mesh as a whole, and then it's going to try to reduce it while keeping the detail. But what if I have a little particle floating off into the distance that I wasn't aware of? That can happen a lot. So the first way to solve if your mesh is going to be good for decimation before running it through is to actually go to PolyGroups and go to AutoGroups. If you hit AutoGroups, and then if I were to click and hold the Shift and Control button, click one time and then swipe, and if it flips, and it may not look like there's anything there, you could have had some little particles that were floating. The second way, which is usually the best fix for everything after you do the AutoGroups, is go down to Geometry, Mesh Integrity, and check the mesh detail. If there's errors, either collided, like flip normals, collided topology, or little random specks of things floating in the ether, this will catch it. And then if it does, you just click fix mesh, and that should solve that problem. If Decimation Master is still hanging up after that, which it shouldn't at that point, you might have a hole somewhere. And if you have a hole somewhere, it's gonna error out sometimes. So that's the other thing. So you could go to your modify topology and go to close holes, and that should also solve it. So those are the 3 pain points that usually trips Decimation Master up pretty well. Sometimes ZRemesher too. So those are some good ways to check that. And then from there, yeah, go into Z plugin. Let's just go ahead and dock this on the right-hand side. And then let's go to Decimation Master. So let's say I really want to protect his teeth and his eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and just mask out this area here. Now I'm using a mouse like a madman. So let's switch to my pen, because the other thing I want to showcase too is the gradiency. So we got some hard edges here, but I'm going to do kind of a nice soft masking here. Now here's something that I'm going to mention as well. You don't want to mask everything, because when you're masking your mesh, you're telling ZBrush, this is the most important area. Everything else, I don't care about. So if it's 90% masked off or even 50% masked off, that's too much. Then you're going to get a really big difference, because it's going to, let's say you're taking 4 million and you're kicking it down to only like 50,000 points. That's a lot. That it has to go somewhere. And so it's going to bunch up a lot of points into a small masked off area, and everything else is going to ignore. And I can show an extreme example of that. But here I have a hard mesh mask and I have a soft. So then from there, what I like to do is I actually like to come to my custom points here, and I like to start something up in the 4 millions as high as the 1,000. Because what this is actually, that's equivalent to about 1 million. Because again, you're just saying that total point. So 1,000 points, that's 1 million. Sounds confusing, I know, but there, just trust me. Slide the sucker all the way up and then hit custom. And then what we're going to look at is what it looks like when it processes. Now, if you just come in here and hit custom, notice I didn't hit pre-proc, or, I didn't hit pre-proc current or pre-proc all. I rarely hit pre-process all, because usually, depending on if you got 100 subtools, that's going to take forever. So one at a time is going to be your best friend. So once you go ahead and click that guy, then from there, just let it think, and then I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll push it down. I always start higher than you think, and then I work my way down to prevent any errors from happening, which sometimes it's unavoidable. All right, so it's taking a second because it is quite large. I'll take a sip of water, I would think. And I'm also looking at the chat too. While that's happening, how could you get here's a great question. How could you get the details and sculpts back in the MetaTailor? Would you bake a normal? So if you wanted to get sculptural information into MetaTailor, it will need, and Jordan, you can stop me at any point if I get this information wrong.
Sure.
But you need to bring in like an OBJ or FBX, and it has to be rigged. So if you have sculptural details on there and you have like the maps and stuff, then bringing your mesh into MetaTailor is as simple as importing it. But is it possible to bring in any additional normal maps? How does that work, Jordan?
Yeah, so you can adjust your normal maps once you bring in whether it's a character or clothing. And even if you exported it after that, you can go back in and adjust the normal maps, assuming that the UVs stayed the same. So it definitely can be done if you have the right normals after you've used ZBrush.
Perfect. Awesome. So going back to the mask question, now I'm going to go ahead and real quick, I'm going to show the frame. So this is not really clear yet, so we're going to reduce it even further, but you can start to see the masked area is very dense, and then the area outside of the mask is starting to get a little smaller. So let's go crazy. Let's hit 250,000. Now it already processed, so now this is going to be boom. But see, here's what I'm talking about, right? Look, I gave a lot of masking information. And so it's like, sure, do you want to protect those eyes? You want to protect that mouth? Other points have to go somewhere else. So this is where you want to mask with purpose, is my point. So in this case here,
you turned a salamander into a frog, so maybe somebody wants to do that.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So here you want to kind of like keep that going, you know. And so let's hit reduce one more time, and we'll show you a bit of a difference. You want to proceed with caution. This is like one of those things where like Decimation Master actually does a really great job without having to mask off. It's just if you really want to mask off some other details, you know. But see here, you could see it's starting to give me a little gradiency. Let's clear the mask, and you can see just the difference between the eyes and the rest of it. It's just ZBrush will have to say, I don't care about the rest, and that's what you're going to protect. If you zoom all the way in, you might notice a subtle difference. Like there's a little line right here that I'm picking up. That's just the artist's brain in me. But to the average Joe, they may not even recognize that. So in this case, this would be fine. 500,000 is a lot for a slicer, but it's not too much. Most slicers today can do like 1,000 per piece, or sorry, 1,000,000 per piece when it comes in. I used Bamboo Lab to do the print. And so I was able to keep it around 0.5 mil to 1 mil of total points, and it handled it just fine. So you don't have to go too low for slicers these days. But just to back it up a bit, let me show you. And let me show you real quick. This is on this side of it. This will be the one with the masking. And now I'm going to go ahead and back this up before we masked off. There we go. Perfect. And now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to say 500. And we'll see if we can, quote, see a difference. But that's how you would do that. You want to make sure that you're protecting the area only that you absolutely need to. And that's really for like super fine, crisp details. He's pretty stylized, but you'll see here that it's gonna keep the details fairly well. And needing to reduce that low isn't necessarily, it's not always needed. It's just a case-by-case basis. But hopefully that answered that question. Oh, we have a question for you while this goes through, Jordan. Is there a beta tester for MetaTailor?
Great question. So MetaTailor right now is actually completely live. You can go to the website and download that. We have a free version and a pro version. We are in beta mode for our plugins, which is, and we'll talk about that, you know, after Ian's done here, which the bridge plugins, but essentially that allows you to take whatever you made in Character Creator, whether you sculpted it ZBrush first and sent it over, clothing, accessories, or character-wise, you'll actually be able to beam that with our bridge straight into Engine and have essentially your wardrobe that you've kind of crafted right there in Engine, and you can beam it onto any character at runtime.
Yep. Oh, awesome, dude. Awesome. Cool. All right. I think this thought for a second. There it is. So this is 500,000 on screen right, and this was on screen left, the masked off version. And you can see here, there's like almost no difference with that. And actually, let's go a little bit lower. I'm just going to go insane, hit 150,000 total points, and look at that. So even without masking, Decimation Master can do a really great job keeping those details. And you can see I didn't really lose much. If anything, I got a little bit more skin texture now because it's low enough to where it's kind of giving me just a little bit of artifacting or faceting rather, but it's actually kind of cool. I like that. So it's helping with that. So hopefully that answered that question for there. The other thing too I wanted to cover before we run out of time, of course, is some of the tools you guys can use when you're working on clothing. So like I'd mentioned earlier here, this is the quote outfit that we had used. Now I come through, ZRemeshed it, and then I also gave it some polygroups. But something to kind of note, and this is always fun, is in this is going to lead into this question by 3D Gary here, which is how to smooth edges. You know, he's like, I'm like making some edges. It's not smooth. How do you smooth? So you can actually smooth some edges just with a few different brushes. The one specifically that I'm thinking of course, is one of our smooth brushes, is our smooth cloth brush. So the smooth cloth brush actually is one of the few brushes that can smooth an edge. Let's turn off sculptures for a second. So if I start smoothing, it's one of the brushes that can smooth an edge. And so here you can see I'm actually smoothing that. If you, of course, you know, if that's too drastic of it, you can always reduce, obviously, the intensity of stuff like that. But you can also, too, and this is something I do a lot, little trick to get edges a little straighter, is go use ZModeler and hover over an edge. And we're going to go ahead and say we want to mask, if I can find it. There it is. It's right in my face. And complete edge loop. So I can mask off this edge loop, Control tap to invert that edge loop. And then from here, right, I can actually position my gizmo so it's maybe facing a little bit nicer. And then I could just use the scale a bit to adjust that. Even do control and scale together to give me a straighter edge, which will help kind of clean that up just a bit. So if it's too wonky, like that was a little, you know, it was a little wobbly here, but just by doing this, control, boom, kind of re-cleans that edge up, giving you a much straighter edge and easy to use. But yeah, so just the cloth brush will actually, cloth smooth brush will help you smooth those edges down. So that's B for brush, S, and then looks like B for smooth cloth brush. And you just say okay, because you just need to hold shift to smooth that down. Now, one of the other things too that I did was I wanted some more natural wrinkles. One of the things that's really cool about the way this sweater came in was there's already some nice, what I call memory folds, areas in which the folds themselves naturally lay on top of the body. But let's say I wanted to bend the arm for a second. So if we open up the brush and go to Transpose, we have a Transpose cloth brush, okay? And this whole thing is geared off of the dynamic system. So if I were to pin the dynamic system for a second, the dynamic system allows us to manipulate the clothing and kind of give us some natural collision. So I could turn up the collision here. We'll turn off gravity for a second. And here, I don't need to run the simulation. All I need to do is kind of just position this. Here, let's just hold Alt and drag this here. And this area, this like this. Now I'm going to mask off a spot. So let's go ahead and get the mask lasso. Just going to mask off this area, maybe where I want the fold to be. You can soften it a bit if you would like, just by control tapping. And now from here, I'm going to go ahead, and if I start to bend this, right, now I'm going to get some natural folds. And if I actually, you know, scale it up a little bit, maybe hit control and inflate, right, that's going to give me something that's looking really nice. And if I were to smooth this down, maybe smooth that up a little bit, maybe come in here, you could see now that I'm actually getting some nice natural folds. And this also works with twisting as well. So this is a way to get some natural folds in, and then you can start sculpting the rest of the way. And so this is how I ended up kind of posing the character. I went ahead and just like isolated just a sweater, and then just kind of like posed it around the character as I saw fit, just to give me some of those natural wrinkles, which is really cool. Let's say you're got an addition to this question, which is, oh, no worries. I'm sure your English is good. Let's say I'm making a rectangle box manual, and I have to smooth the edge. Like they don't look like zigzags. Oh, okay. I think I know what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. So the thing with edge smoothing, I think that masking trick might actually work out a little well for you. What makes ZBrush a little bit different is the fact that it's based off of vertices, those point-to-point connections. So if you have a box and you need to smooth just that one edge, you know, everything in ZBrush is kind of sculptural. So let me see if I can replicate something for you real fast. But if I were to go to Insert, let's go to Cube real quick. And then I'm just going to hit the gear icon, and then I'm going to just choose the PolyCube because this gives me a really nice clean cube inside of ZBrush. Again, if I were to maybe make, if you have points that are kind of all over the place here, again, like the normal smooth brush, if we were to just go back to that for a second, so just smooth here, say that's fine, skip it till it's done. The normal smooth brush will start to smooth normal edges. What makes the cloth brush so different is it's going to smooth the edge of when it's not connected to anything else. Like this is all connected to itself, right? But on something like this sweater, it's not going to smooth that edge. It's going to preserve it. All right. And this is a brush setting. All brush settings can be adjusted by actually coming up to the brush menu. And I just docked it over here. And you actually can go into modifiers. And there's a smooth function here. If we tap and hold Control, it's just saying it's gonna apply that smooth to the tail of the stroke, right? So this is where if you start really adjusting this stuff, this is where you could start getting some of that. And also your strength multiplier too. You want a stronger smooth brush, just adjust that. You want pressure, constant tilt. This is where some of this stuff gets turned on. And this is where you could play with a lot of that. So it's just really adjusting the brush as see fit. Because the cloth brush already smooths that edge, that is the kind of difference between the two, which I keep picking the wrong one. I keep going to cloth brush, but it's actually under smooth. And then this is the brush again. If I were to go to my brush modifiers and stuff, you can see that, oh, the strength multiplier is much different than on the regular one. And so this will actually, boom, smooth all that down. But in the case of what you were showcasing, I personally would have to see exactly where you want to move. But if you wanted to get points kind of cleaned up a little bit, again, that masking function might be really cool. And sometimes it's just actually coming in and just moving it as you need it to. I know it's not always the right way to do it, I guess. I don't know. I'm very traditional with sculpting sometimes, so, but hopefully that helps with that. Let's see. We only have a few more. We only have a few more minutes here, but we have another question. In MetaTailor, is there a difference between cloth functionality per material?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Ian, I can actually show some stuff kind of as we're closing out here, now that you've showed the workflow on that question and some other things as well.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, let me know when you want to pop over.
Yeah, so I've got that open now.
All right, cool. There you go.
So one thing we get asked a lot is if you have, like, let's say an armor vest or some kind of metal on top of cloth, and how does MetaTailor, when it comes to maybe physics or doing dynamic stuff to the outfits, how does that actually adjust? And what I'll do is I'll show you guys really quick. So you can see here, there's a holster on the character here. And typically a holster, obviously would be more stiff, and then the cloth around it or the straps around it would maybe move a little bit more than the actual polymer holster. So you can see it's stretching a little bit just because it's skin weighted. But what you can actually do, and this is coming out in the next version of MetaTailor, is you'll actually be able to paint rigidity as the character is in real time. So we'll go over here and we'll just start painting on different areas of rigidity. And that allows you to keep that area, so that surface, stiff while everything else around it stays kind of cloth-like or moves around. Whether you're applying physics to it or you just want to adjust kind of how the skin weights are actually assigned to the character itself. So once you go in and paint those areas that are stiff with different material, you'll actually get a much better result there. So you can see that holster now stays perfectly straight, stiff, and doesn't bend with the actual skin weights applied to the rest of the outfit there.
Yeah, dude, that's so cool, actually.
And as we're closing out here, one thing I'll also show you guys is so when you talk about bringing in different materials or even different aspects of an outfit. So as we talked about at the beginning of the stream, MetaTailor works with any avatar, any rig, any engine, and it allows you to be able to really mix and match absolutely any piece of content you want on any avatar. Now, what you're seeing here, this actually allows you, let's say you have a fully dressed avatar and all the clothing items are separate mesh groups. This actually allows you to modulate out all of those aspects of the outfit in one click. So you can assign all the different aspects into different categories inside of your content browser. So now you've taken this fully dressed rigged avatar, you've brought it into MetaTailor, and as you're importing it, you can kind of extract off the clothing if you'd like. So we call this our mesh extractor. And this allows you, because for example, if you've created a sculpt in ZBrush that has all this stuff on it, then you go rig it. This will allow you to extract those pieces of clothing and use them in different ways, as an artist. Along with the rigidity brush, this is one more example that Ian and I were actually talking about earlier. Let me get this open here. So you can see another kind of example here. So the first one we showed you was with something that's attached to the character. This is something that is more accessory focused. You see that axe on the back there. Typically, if you brought that in, it has skin weights applied to it, so it's kind of stretching and bending a little bit. But once you apply the rigidity to it, you can see it stays animated and it stays stiff, just like that. And then the final thing I'll show you guys too, because I did see a question about this earlier, is, let's bring this one up here. And I'll skim through this one real quick. And for you guys that are going to SIGGRAPH, we'll be demoing this out there as well. But essentially, MetaTailor right now, you can import anything you want. And then the idea is you can have an FBX, or you can just beam that over to any other environment with our bridge. And we have 3 bridges right now, 1 that's live and 2 that are coming. One of them is to Character Creator. So you can have your character, bring it in, and then just immediately beam that over to Character Creator. And it's fully rigged, ready to go. We also have Unity coming. So this will allow you to have all of the outfits that you've created in MetaTailor. You can have them live inside of your project, inside of the game engine, and then assign characters in engine that you want the clothing to be attached to. So if you have a crowd, for example, you can actually beam that straight over to the characters right there in the game, and you can see at runtime, it applies it to the character. And then same thing for Unreal Engine. So once you brought the clothing in, you send it right over. There you go. You can now play on a playable character, sent right over. Now, to see what that wardrobe looks like, so if you look at the bottom here, you'll see that there is the dynamic wardrobe that's actually, or dynamic content library that's actually in your project. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Same thing with Unity, where you can actually have that content that lives in your project and then be able to assign that to a character anytime you like. So again, if you, because I saw a question about this, if you guys have, you want to check out the free version, or just see how it works for your own custom avatars, because as Ian just showed you guys, you can import your own custom avatars and do whatever you'd like to them. So if you guys have, I think there was a link in chat, you guys can check that out and try out the free version as well. And
Yeah,
really looking forward to seeing any of you guys that are going to be at SIGGRAPH as well.
Absolutely. Here, I'll drop a couple more links again, just to. You also, too, you had a Discord as well that I'd like to share, so I'm going to post that right now as well. So if anybody would like to hop in and have a conversation with you and the guys, there you go. So
yeah, and we typically, when we do live streams in Discord or something like that, we'll show the stuff that is behind the scenes. We will, you guys get a first look at anything coming new. So like what you guys just saw with the rigidity brush, no one's seen that yet. So you guys were the first.
Awesome. Well, I feel honored, man. That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, first off, I don't know why I said first off. We're right at the end first. Dude, thank you so much, Jordan, for being here.
Absolutely,
it's super awesome to have you. And thank you for everybody who showed up. Yes, there will be a VOD on this. It's going to be on the ZBrush channels as well as the Maxon training team. So absolutely go to those channels and subscribe and check that out, because it will be up momentarily after it processes the stream. And again, if you guys have any questions whatsoever about this and you're at SIGGRAPH, come up to the booth, say hi to me and Jordan, because we're going to be demoing this project as well as some other really cool stuff. So I'd love to see you there. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up. So thank you so much for being here, Jordan. Really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, guys. And Ian, amazing job. Killed it.
Thanks, man.
And like Ian said, guys, that project that he did from ZBrush-MetaTailor and to printing will be available. So if you guys have the free version or even the pro version, you'll be able to take that project and bring it right in and play with it just like Ian did. So that'll be really cool. Cool. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, take it easy. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time. So have fun. See you guys. All right.